Okay, so here's the thing. We're sitting here in Claude Desktop, and this is called Cowork. And one of the things that Cowork gets us is the ability to pick a folder and say, we're going to work. Now, one of the benefits of Claude Desktop is that we get to work locally. So this thing is going to touch files on this local computer, and then we're going to have it connect what's called an MCP. We're going to connect like an API call to something remote. And yet, we don't want any of our proprietary private information that's related to this customer to leave our desk. And that's what we're going to play out with. At the same time, in the cloud, we have a whole bunch of advice we want to give without sharing our intellectual property. We're going to watch how this plays out. So I've written the instructions, right, which says, hey, I want your help. And we have a fictitious server, right, that is called our pitch coach. And now we're going to get going. And as we do this, it's going to, of course, go and read all the files in that folder. It's going to ask me for permission to make an outbound call to the MCP. That's all standard. And so we see this as it's moving. But what's really going to get interesting is that it's going to take this information that we have, and then it's going to extract the stuff it needs to send up to the pitch coach without ever sending any private information. Okay, so it's read all the files, which is great. So here we go. It's gonna start shaping the pitch, right? It's gonna grab some information and it's gonna pass it up to the cloud. But none of this information has the name of the client. None of it has the details of the client. None of that is in here. What you're seeing is some metadata, right? And we'll see that again when we go look at the console, right? Now, up in the cloud, what we have is an entire rule engine of 30 proprietary rules on how to shape pitches. These are proprietary. This is the IP of Pitch Coach. And we don't want that to come all the way down to our computer, because if we do that, we're just, dealing with the same exact problem from the flip side. Everybody has their IP and nobody wants to give away the IP, and yet we want our IP, we want the information to be leveraged. We want to make it useful. We just don't want to expose it. And when AI gets involved, it's not just exposing it to a client. It's the potential that it has been dropped into AI and then the LLM will grab it and do what it wants with it, not just for, whoever's using it, but whatever it wants to do. So, how do you manage that? To do that well, what we have to do is create this level of abstraction that can decide what moves back and forth, right? And does it in a non IP driven proprietary way. So it came back and it said, hey, we noticed a couple things. It noticed it without reading the pitch. I want you to understand what just happened. They didn't take my client's pitch and pass the whole thing up, which is what most software does, right? They're just like, look, we promise that we won't lose your data. We promise we won't let someone steal your data. We promise that we'll encrypt your data at rest. We promise that we'll encrypt it as it transports. All promises. And most time we see those promises broken. Here, it didn't pass any of that information. And yet, because this local LLM was able to analyze the original pitch, it was able to extract metadata about it, send it up. Our rule engine was able to then figure out which rules applied to that metadata and then shape its response, this feedback, without sharing the underlying kernel of that IP, right? We didn't expose the rules and said, okay, here's what we recommend. Okay, let's just look at what it just did, right? Because this is so powerful. It was able to take metadata about the pitch and push it up to the cloud, but it didn't take any of the proprietary information, none of the details. The cloud doesn't know what my client's name is, where they're located, what they're dealing with, none of that, right? That's powerful But then you're like, well, how does it pick the rules? Because it abstracted some metadata, it went up to the cloud with that metadata, which triggered which rules applied. And then it didn't want to send back rule 3 and 4 and 5 with the explicit text of those rules. So it ran an AI loop that turned it into practical, useful advice without exposing all of the IP. And you'll see that this LM now gets that feedback back and says, oh man, this is good. Like, yeah, this is really helpful. And then this LLM looks at other files on my local desktop, right? In that folder, it says, hey, when you take this feedback with the additional information in this folder, it's actually quite powerful. And so I would rewrite it this way. So now what I'll do is say, can you send this rewrite up to the pitch coach to see if it needs further shaping? And what's going to happen is we're going to do it again, right? And you can do this as many times as you want, and I'm never exposing what's down here. Even when you read this message, right? All of these details include specific things that are related to my client. It's not going to send all this, right? It's not. It's going to take and extract key parts of this and send it back up the wire. And so we're going to get this. They're not anonymous, but they are decoupled from the IP. And that's the powerful model here. And so we can do this 2, 3, 4 times, refine it and get something great. And the IP from Pitch Coach has never left that cloud instance. And the IP from my local desktop has never left either. And that's incredible, right? So what you see is it goes, okay, hey, it collected more feedback and it said, here's a tighter version, right? And so I'm going to say, let's send this version up and see if all clear. And this is the expectation, right? That I should be able to iterate and then find out, right? Did it all work? But where it's going to get super interesting, right, is I'm going to come over here to a browser, put on my glasses to look closely at this. So here's the pitch coach that we were just talking about, right? And I'm going to come in here and I'm going to look at, right, what came in, right, and what went out and all this stuff. So if I look at the outbound and I'm getting the details, right? And what you're going to see is nothing proprietary of our pitch coaches stuff goes out the door. Let's see, I'm looking, oh, this is the privacy rule, right? So this is just ensuring that if we think we're about to send something, the privacy rule double checks it to make sure 0 internal verdicts, right, are phrased and pushed in the response. So that's all the outgoing. So this is what came in, right? The tag too long, right? For C-suite recipient, pitch over 100 words, right? This is what we were seeing, is that the length was too long. But notice this doesn't say anything about the client name, whatever. This is the metadata. So you're looking at the actual evidence that says nothing crossed the wire. And that's maybe the most powerful part of it. And of course, right, this says, hey, we got really close, but it's saying, hey, cut the word short, which we saw in that message. And so we go, okay, let's get it even tighter, right? And that's, ship at 117 words. That's this LLM on this side saying, I think we got it.